The United States Supreme Court has issued a massive 5-4 ruling, which is a high-stakes election law ruling, completely reversing a federal appeals court involving a state's current voting laws and mail-in ballots. In a major showdown over these mail-in ballots, the Supreme Court officially ruled that states can absolutely count absentee ballots after they arrive on that election day, so long as they are postmarked by the election day itself. But the real shockwave isn't just the final ruling. In a dynamic 5-4 opinion authored by Justice Barrett, the Supreme Court completely rejected the legal theories pushed by the RNC itself, drawing a definitive line between the act of voting and the back-end process of ballot receipt. This ruling doesn't just affect this one state. It upholds the election framework for roughly 30 states across the nation that use similar deadlines. So in this video, we're going to break down this 5-4 ruling by the Supreme Court, the split between that majority and the very, furiously, angry dissent here of the conservative justice. And we need to discuss, why this is going to fundamentally alter kind of the legal landscape involving elections and is going to impact this upcoming election cycle. Now, before we jump into what the Supreme Court did in this ruling, if you like this type of content and you want to ensure that you get it going forward, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also turn on the notification bell. Turn on all notifications to ensure you never miss this type of information. Now, to understand how we reached this very critical breaking point and ruling in this case, we have to look at how the lower federal court recently ruled on some of these election law practices. This entire battle centers around a Mississippi law which allows certain residents to vote absentee by mail or by common carrier. Under Mississippi's rules, as long as a ballot is postmarked on or before election day and received within 5 business days, it still counts. In 2024, the RNC, the Mississippi Republican Party, and the Libertarian Party filed massive lawsuits against Mississippi and the state law. They argue that the federal election day statutes, which set a uniform Tuesday in November for federal elections, established a hard nationwide deadline for both ballot casting and ballot receipt. Now, on review, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with the RNC. They issued a bombshell ruling that held that the federal law completely preempts Mississippi statute because ballots must be in the hands of election officials by that election day. However, in response, Mississippi's Secretary of State launched an appeal and they went straight to the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, setting up a very critical and kind of monumental statutory showdown and review involving the election and these mail-in ballots. And yesterday, we got the Supreme Court's ruling in this case. They issued a 5-4 ruling upholding Mississippi's mail-in ballot law. Now, Justice Barrett authored the majority opinion, and she was joined by Chief Justice Roberts, and then also the 3 justices that are on the liberal wing of the Supreme Court. Now, in that ruling, they completely rejected the RNC's core argument in this case. Barrett systematically rejected the idea that an election requires immediate receipt of all of these votes. The majority stated that under a fundamental canon of statutory construction, words must be interpreted by their ordinary meaning at the time of the enactment. So they said that dating back to the 19th century, dictionaries and the Supreme Court precedents have defined an election as the expression of the electorate's choice, the act of choosing a candidate by a vote. The majority of the Supreme Court ruled that the electorate's choice is made when the voting is complete, not when the physical ballot is received by a government official. So to support this, Justice Barrett in the majority pointed to another federal law, which is the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. This law explicitly, in her words, cross-references state law deadlines for ballot receipt. The majority pointed out that if the federal law had already established a rigid nationwide ballot receipt and that deadline on Tuesday, Congress's own military voting statutes referencing state receipt deadlines would have actually made absolutely no sense. So that is the position that was taken by the majority. Now, of course, this ruling was met with a scathing dissent from the court's conservative justices. You had Alito, who penned a lengthy, aggressive dissent, and that was joined by Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh joined a vast majority of that dissent as well. Now, in the dissent, Alito accused the majority of completely misinterpreting the mechanics of an election. The dissent argued that an election is not a piecemeal affair. It is the collective choice of the electorate, which is only authoritatively expressed when the entire collection of ballots is completed and handed over to officials. Alito in this dissent warned that by allowing ballots to pour in for 5 days or up to 21 days in some states after the election day, the majority has opened up a dangerous Pandora's box. The dissent here aggressively laid out the real-world policy consequences, arguing that allowing the collection of ballots to continue past election day invites chaos and potential other manipulation issues. Alito cited landmark reports in previous cases warning that mail-in voting is historically the most vulnerable to potential manipulation, and he painted a very grim picture of close, high-stake presidential elections or other elections where initial leads are set on the election day, but then they flip days after or weeks after the polls close, and we should continue to get these mail-in ballots that pour in certain states. And he warned that this drawn-out process will severely damage popular faith in election integrity. Alito states in the dissent that not only is today's decision inconsistent with statutory text, legal context, historical practice, and precedent, it also threatens to produce lamentable consequences as well. The majority's holding spawns a slurry of troubling election law questions and risks to further undermine Americans' confidence in election integrity. So that is a very strong statement coming from Alito and all of the other dissenting justices, in this case, raising a red flag and concern about what this ruling will do for the election going forward. But regardless of the dissent's current frustration, the legal reality across the United States has now shifted because of that 5-4 ruling and the majority opinion that was authored by Justice Barrett. The Supreme Court majority has completely reversed the Fifth Circuit ruling, and the green light has been given to state legislators to dictate their own ballot receipt terms. This means that for roughly 30 states that use postmark deadlines, those laws will remain in place going forward. So the majority stated that if the RNC or these political challengers want a uniform nationwide ballot receipt deadline, they cannot look to the Supreme Court or to the judiciary itself to get involved. Instead, they have to go to Congress directly, go through the process, and get them to pass a law. So the Supreme Court has drawn a definitive line in the sand, leaving the administration of mail-in ballots in those windows to the states themselves. So that is what has currently happened with the 5-4 Supreme Court election ruling involving mail-in ballots. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think about the majority opinion? Do you think they got it wrong? And do you think that this will simply just create more distrust and chaos going forward involving elections? So again, let me know your thoughts down below. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure you turn on the notification bell to ensure that you never miss these videos once I release them. But as always, thank you guys so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.